Let's go to the phones. Let's go to lead attorney, vice president of the Goldwater Institute, also a big Buck Rogers and 24th Century fan, our friend Tim Sandefur. What's up?
I'm just great to be back here. I must say, I admit, though, that though I'm a big science fiction fan, I don't think I've ever actually watched Buck Rogers.
You're not missing much. I'm not saying it was great, but it was part of our childhood. As we're in our teens, and part of you coming out of that Star Wars thing, and everyone was trying to capitalize on that. So,
totally, Battlestar Galactica and all the rest. Absolutely, those were good times, man.
Very, very bizarre. Where they had a robot that was called Tweaky in it, and of course they used the great Mel Blanc as his voice, doing basically Bugs Bunny coming out of a robot, which was quite bizarre.
Oh, the golden age of television.
Carrying around a electronic face named Dr. Theopolis that talked. Anyway, that's where we're at. Now that we're officially off the rails, Timothy, tell me about this Pinal County case that the Supreme Court ruled in the Goldwater Institute's favor about a transportation excise tax. What was the excise tax? Why was this different than other taxes possibly put forth by other municipalities?
Well, because what happens here is, under state law, if you want to adopt one of these taxes to fix up the roads, that's perfectly fine, but you just have to get voter approval. And the fact is that taxpayers in Pinal County didn't want to pay more taxes. They've already had to pay a lot of taxes, and the county keeps wasting this money instead of spending it in order to fix up the roads. And so they knew it would not be politically popular. So in order to neutralize political opposition from important figures in the county, the way that the politicians decided to do it this time was they created this $10,000 cutoff that said if you buy something that costs more than $10,000, the tax won't apply to you. So in other words, if you bought a whole bunch of, dog food at Walmart, you're having to pay this extra tax. But if you buy a BMW or something, then you're not required to pay the tax. And that's pretty unusual, to impose a tax that falls heavier on people of middle or low income than on people of higher income like that is pretty remarkable. But the reason why was in order to neutralize opposition to the tax at the ballot box.
I can't believe the car dealers have a better lobbyist than the dog food people.
It's hard to imagine, I know, but the state law doesn't allow this. State law says if you're going to adopt one of these kinds of taxes, here's the categories that you tax, and here's how you do it, and it has to be the same, and there you go. And the reason for that is because you don't want to have every one of the 15 counties in the state imposing its own different tax rates, which would be bad for business and would scare businesses out of the state, and they would go and do business elsewhere, and it would harm the economy. So we have this uniform tax rate. Besides which, what a total headache to the Arizona Department of Revenue when it tries to check everybody's paperwork and has to count every single county separately, right? So we filed a lawsuit. We said this is illegal, and the Department of Revenue actually agreed with us. This has got to be the first time we've ever been on the same side as the Arizona Department of Revenue. But they agreed with us that this is illegal, and sure enough, the state Supreme Court yesterday declared that it was illegal, which means that the business owners in Pinal County now get to file refunds and get their money back, which this is a lot of money because this has been, 4 or 5 years now that this has been going on. The county told us all along, no, we're keeping all this money in a special escrow account so that we can refund people if we have to, and so now they'll have to make good on that.
So the real issue was having the two-tiered tax system, correct?
That's right.
Gotcha. Okay, because so as long as they're taxing everyone across the board, then it's legal.
Yeah, because if you can impose a tax on on the sale of cars or on the sale of gas or something like that, perfectly fine. But you can't subdivide that category into saying, well, however we want. Well, gas stations on the east side of town, the tax is going to be X, but on the west side of town, it's going to be Y, and that it becomes so complicated and difficult for businesses to do the paperwork and follow the rules that a lot of the times they'll just, why bother, And so that's why the state legislature, well, first of all, it's why the state legislature is in charge of this. It's why we don't just let counties do whatever they want to. And then the state legislature was asked before all this began, hey, would you allow counties to separate up taxes this way? And the state legislature said no. Nevertheless, Pinal County went ahead and did it anyway and said, well, we're going to carve up these categories and tax in different ways. So we sent them a letter and said, this is illegal. You really shouldn't do this. They ignored us, and so we saw them in court.
We're talking to Tim Sandefur from the Goldwater Institute. Questions or comments, 790-2040 is the phone number. Timothy, what's going on with silly people with balloons? Oh, is there...
What a surprise that you would ask. Yes.
This guy's like a broken record down there.
This is, and we, as we always do, we should take a moment to allow the county stenographer to get out her pen and paper to write down everything we say, because as we know, every time I'm on your show to talk about the balloon case, I get a nasty letter from the county about how I, mispronounced some word or something. Anyway, so this is the case where the county, where Pima County decided to invest a bunch of taxpayer money as a subsidy for this business called Worldview that was supposed to take tourists on rides to the stratosphere in specially modified weather balloons. We say that's unconstitutional because the state constitution prohibits the government from subsidizing private businesses with taxpayer money. We have an argument in the Court of Appeals on that question, on whether this is constitutional, at the end of this month. So really looking forward to that.
Look at that. So what's interesting is how does Pima County's stance on various things change? Because as you may or may not know, Mr. Huckleberry got in a horrible bicycle accident and is basically, he's basically at home recovering. So because he's always been the straw that stirs the drink on these things, right? On Worldview, he's the guy who stirs the drink on having stenographers write down what me and you say, because he doesn't, this is his thing. So it'd be interesting to see how Pima County behaves now that Chuck's not part of the picture anymore, including the stenographer who's like, oh God, now I got to go back and do my real job.
Yeah, maybe. But, one thing that has changed is during this lawsuit, when we filed this lawsuit, we said, it's pretty ridiculous that the government is subsidizing a business that is supposed to be sending tourists on specially modified weather balloon trips into the stratosphere at $75,000 per ticket or whatever it was, which is, way above what the average person earns in a year in this area. And the county's response after a few months, they came back and said, no, it was never supposed to really be about the tourists. That was supposed to be a different thing. And they tried to downplay the tourist angle. Well, and sure enough, if you went to Worldview's website, that issue had really kind of been downplayed. Oh, no, it's all about weather satellites. Well, if you go to the website now, it's all about tourism again. So you're right about the shifting stories. And unfortunately, this has been a boondoggle. We like to call it the balloon doggle. This has been a balloon doggle from day one, and we're hoping that the Court of Appeals will declare it unconstitutional at the end of this month.
You remember the county justified the use of the emergency procurement provisions. It's because they said other cities wanted to poach Worldview because they wanted the demand for them is like, I don't see any of these other cities saying, Worldview, come now.
And a lot of the time, these kinds of things come along, and it looks to politicians like they'll create jobs and all this sort of thing, get in the headlines and all that sort of thing. And they're almost always they're balloon doggles. And this story that we've heard a couple months ago out of New Mexico about the spaceport, the so-called spaceport in New Mexico, turning out to be a giant waste of taxpayer money, is just yet another example of how politicians go for these flashy things instead of realizing that what builds an economy is private investors making decisions for themselves, not politicians who think they can pick winners and losers in the economy. When you give the government the power to pick winners and losers in the economy, what happens is the consumer doesn't get listened to. Instead, the squeaky wheels, the political lobbyists, they get listened to. The politicians do their own thing. And whether or not the consumer actually gets a better deal in the end is really, it almost never actually happens, because the best way to make life better for the consumer is to allow people to make their own economic decisions about what businesses should survive, what businesses should get rich, what businesses should fail, what businesses should improve. Those decisions should be made individually, not by politicians.
I hear the guy who's the current CEO of Worldview and people are doing interviews with him like this is like a real deal, and I'm always like laughing, going, what are you guys talking about? It's a joke. So remember, in the end, Tim, and for some of the new listeners, we fronted $20 million almost, or possibly a little more, so Sharon Bronson can have a 2016 re-election economic development story to tell. That's it.
It was to build this fancy new balloon factory and headquarters building and a balloon launch pad. And the county's argument in the case that at the end of this month, one of the things that they're trying to say, they're claiming that this balloon launch pad is just like a freeway off-ramp. You see, it's transportation infrastructure for the county. Because, there's so much demand out there for balloon launch pads in Tucson. There's the balloon traffic there is so heavy, you got to leave the house early in order not to get stuck in a balloon traffic jam.
We got to share with Tim in relation that the balloon pad is Sideshow Bob. He needs a Sideshow Bob laugh. This is for... This is for the saying it's public. You say transportation infrastructure? Is that what they said?
That's right. Yeah,
all right.
That's right.
Hit him with Sideshow Bob. No, sorry. Sorry.
And just look how happy he is.
All right, just wanted to share that with you. If you want me,
I'm going to ask the judges if they'll let me play that during my argument.
If there's visitors in the gallery, I could be there with my my boombox, and you just point at me.
What I wonder is how is the person transcribing our conversation going to write that down? Ha ha ha, or
I'm going to be like John Cusack and say anything with a boombox over my head, and you just.
That'd be court TV worth watching.
So when's your court date on this, Tim?
That's, I believe, on the 29th. I will. I'll double check that and let you know.
Awesome. Is that something anyone can view on? Can you view that? Is that streaming or anything like that?
In fact, we've been told that it will be streaming at least to the law school. The law students will be watching the live video, so there should be some way to watch online for you.
Well, if you can find that out, let me know, because we'll have a popcorn party watching that.
All right.
Thanks. Keep the good work up, buddy.
Thanks, you too, man.
There is Tim Sandefur. He is VP of Litigation at the Goldwater Institute. So.